There were quiet hoofsteps going down the hall. A door creaked closed and latched shut. Lyra was still awake, listening for the telltale sounds of Bonbon going to bed, waiting until she could be sure she wouldn't be disturbed. It was more for Bonbon's sake than her own. Lyra had promised she'd never try this again after the first disaster. She was sitting on her bed with her journal on the nightstand. She raised up her 2 front hooves in front of her face, closed her eyes, and concentrated. Slowly she felt the magic changing her. All this practice had made the spell much easier to cast, with fewer accidents. She hardly noticed the discomfort in the process anymore. It had only taken 2 nights after Bonbon's panic attack before Lyra just hadn't been able to resist trying out her handwriting again. Now she was doing this at least 3 nights a week. When she opened her eyes, she saw a perfect pair of hands. It was a sight that always managed to make her smile. She flexed her fingers, adjusting to the feel of them again.
What would the reaction be if I tried to keep them like this all the time? True, most ponies would probably react like Bonbon did. At least I could still have hands at times like this, when I'm on my own.
She picked up her journal and a quill and flipped to a blank page. There hadn't been any dreams over the past few nights. Still, one of the recurring details had been on her mind a lot lately. As she stared at the page, Lyra scratched her chin thoughtfully, and then started sketching out a few lines. First of all, she had to get the posture right, and the curves of the figure. Female humans had some differences in their shape from the males. Lyra ran her fingers through her mane. It came down to her shoulders, so she tried drawing it like that in the sketch. It didn't look quite right, so she made it a bit shorter. A human's neck wasn't as long as a pony's. Also, there was the issue of clothing. Ponies only wore clothing for special occasions, but humans were always fully clothed. In casual situations, they'd wear pants. Lyra drew those over the legs of the figure, and a long-sleeved shirt on top.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Finally, the face. Lyra stopped for a moment. Her fingers idly stroked the feather of the quill.
What exactly would I look like as a human?
She tried just the general female face. The eyes, they looked a little small, but that was normal. Her ears wouldn't be pointy at all, and they'd be on the sides of her head, about centered. No horn. The horn was something she thought about often. Humans didn't have them, so they couldn't use magic. That might not be so bad. After all, being able to have hands seemed like a fair exchange. She held up her left hand to examine it as she drew with her right. It seemed easier to control the quill with her right hand, so she always used that one. That was it. This was what I'd look like as a human. Lyra held the book up and examined her work. She looked pretty good. All of those weird details, the bipedal posture, the lack of a tail, the fingers, when they were all part of a human figure, they didn't look weird at all. Lyra found herself wishing that she'd actually did look like this, but hands had been difficult enough. This would probably be out of the question. Lyra closed her journal and set it back on the nightstand. Then she blew out the candles and laid her head on the pillow. It might have been a little ridiculous imagining herself as a human. Knowing that they were real didn't change anything. She'd never actually be human, no matter what she did. There was an itchy spot behind her ear, so she reached up to scratch it, and realized she still had hands. That was a close one. As much as she wanted to, Bonbon might kick her out if she kept them, so they had to go. The green light from her horn lit them up as the fingers retracted back into the hooves. The next morning, Bonbon was preparing breakfast as she normally would on the weekends. In the months she had in between the 2 biggest holidays of the year, work would be at a relaxed pace, and she could take it easy for a while. Not to mention all the crazy things Lyra had been doing had also seemed to slow down lately. Bonbon would be content if she never saw another pair of hands again.
Good morning, Bonbon!
Good what's with the...
Lyra was dressed in a white dress shirt and, something that was especially unusual for a pony, a pair of black pants. A tie was hanging loose around her neck. Bonbon had a sick feeling that she knew what this was all about, but hoped she was wrong.
I was gonna head over to Rarity's later. I thought you knew I was picking up my dress for the gala today.
Ah, yes. I almost forgot you'd ordered one from her.
Anyways, humans dress like this all the time, and I was thinking I might make a habit out of it. Personally, I think it looks good on me.
Bonbon stared at her. She started to speak, or tried to. She couldn't think of what to say. She looked down at Lyra's hooves to make sure that they were, in fact, still hooves.
It's...
You don't like it.
It's not that. I just think, it must be a hassle getting dressed every day. Are you sure you want to put up with that kind of trouble?
Nah, it's not really a big deal. this didn't take that long at all. Anyways, let's see!
Taking a deep breath, Bon Bon joined her. Clothes were not that much of an issue. Some ponies liked them. And maybe Lyra would finally get tired after some time and give up on this foolishness. But she was sitting in that way again, leaning back in her chair. It was as if she thought she was one of them. Lyra left home shortly after breakfast. It was chilly out. The leaves had started to fall already, but the trees wouldn't go completely bare for another couple weeks, until they had the running of the leaves. The oranges and reds of the trees stood in stark contrast to the gray skies. Wearing clothes was a good way to stay warm. It definitely helped to block some of the wind. This might be a good habit to start after all. Lyra was beginning to wonder why this particular aspect of human culture hadn't been retained by ponies. Lyra noticed that a few heads were turning to watch her as she trotted through the town, towards Rarity's boutique. In her dreams, the humans were always wearing clothes, but that wasn't how pony culture worked at all. Clothing really made a pony stand out. Lyra knocked on Rarity's door and waited patiently, humming to herself contently and rocking back and forth on her hooves.
Ah, I was expecting to see you today. Come on in. Love the outfit, by the way.
Really?
Oh, but of course. Classic black and white, and that tie really pulls everything together. You truly are a Canterlot pony, aren't you? Some special occasion?
Nope, just felt like it. I actually find the pants very comfortable.
You know, my mother seems to like them as well, though I've always found them a bit, tacky, I suppose. Oh, but they look great on you.
Thanks!
But let's not get sidetracked. I just know you'll love what I've put together for you.
Rarity led her through the chaotic jumble of supplies and sketches, to stand in front of a newly completed dress on a mannequin.
How do you like it?
Lyra's dress was all pure white, except for some turquoise trim and embroidery on the back. The back flowed out gracefully. The sleeves and neck had gold accents, and a brooch shaped like her lyre cutie mark was on the front.
It looks great!
She was reminded of a toga more than anything else. That was an old style of human garment, although she wasn't sure if Rarity would have ever heard of those.
Why don't you try it on? I need to make sure it's absolutely perfect. Oh, and don't forget the matching shoes and mane clip. I went ahead and made you an entire ensemble.
Wow, this is really amazing!
Now quickly, I'd like to see how it looks on you.
Sure, excuse me?
So, how do you like it?
This is excellent.
She turned from side to side, craning her neck to look at herself from all angles. Then she carefully lifted herself up onto her back legs.
What are you doing?
Just wanted to see how it would look.
She tried to stay balanced, but it was hard to stand on two legs for very long.
Lyra, I've noticed that you sometimes sit a tad strangely, particularly when you're performing. Perhaps at the gala you should attempt to be more ladylike.
Huh? Oh, right.
It is a formal event. You're quite fortunate to have been invited. You should know that they will expect all the formalities in Canterlot.
You've been to the gala before, haven't you, Rarity?
Well, yes, but I'm afraid I will not be attending again. Still, don't hesitate to tell every pony where you got your tailor-made dress, and if you see any important Canterlot personalities.
Probably wouldn't recognize them if I did. I've never really paid attention to that kind of thing. Thanks again, by the way.
Oh, it's not a problem at all. Would you like me to wrap that up for you?
Lyra headed out of the boutique and headed back home through Ponyville, thinking about what Rarity had said. The package was floating along next to her.
Canterlot.
Lyra was having mixed feelings about going back there. Like Rarity said, it was very formal. Stuffy and boring would be more accurate. Still, the Grand Galloping Gala was an honor. Being invited was a testament to her talent as a musician. She came up to her house and opened the door. Her head was down in thought as she habitually headed into the living room. Rarity had actually called her a Canterlot pony. That was a laugh. These clothes were more for a human look than high society. Lyra had always felt out of place in Canterlot, which was why she'd been happy to move away from her parents' house.
Ah, there she is. We've missed you, Heartstrings.
Dad? Mom? When did you get here?
They just arrived a few minutes ago. I told them you wouldn't be long.
We told you we'd be visiting today. You must have gotten our letter. You're even dressed up. Very nice.
Oh, right. Let me put this away and I'll be right back.
Leaving the room perhaps a bit too quickly, Lyra headed for her bedroom. First she threw the package into the closet, then she lifted up her journal and hid it under the bed. Rushing into the study, she took down all of her old books and dropped them behind the sofa. Lyra looked over the room, satisfied with her efforts. Should she change out of her human clothes? No, that would take too long. Besides, her mother had already commented on that. Lyra spun around, only to come face to face with Bonbon.
You never told me your parents were visiting Heartstrings. What was that about a letter?
I never got anything. It must have gotten lost in the mail. You know that Pegasus who always brings her mail? She's a total ditz. She loses her stuff all the time.
That may be so, Heartstrings. Anyway, I was just about to start preparing lunch. I'll be in the kitchen. Why don't you spend some time with your family? They've been waiting for you.
Great! You do that! Wait, why do you keep saying my name like that?
Like what? Heartstrings?
Oh. I never told you what my real name is, have I?
No, you didn't. I thought for sure they must have the wrong house when they were asking for Heartstrings. If you had just seen the look they gave me when I said my roommate Lyra was out, why didn't you tell me that Lyra was just a nickname?
Fine. I've been going by my human name ever since I came to Ponyville. I never really caught on like I wanted back in Canterlot, but I never liked my real name.
We've been living together for a few years now. You could have at least told me what your name was.
Sorry, but you have to do me a favor. Please don't tell my parents about the research I've been doing.
Your research?
About humans. My parents, they never really approved of it. They thought I was just going through a phase. All they've ever wanted was for me to act like a normal unicorn. Everything about humans, they think it's a bunch of nonsense.
Oh, Lyra, I think it's a bunch of nonsense.
How many times do I have to say this? What Luna said proves that there's more to this. I'm gonna find something out. But please, just for today, can you act like I'm normal?
You realize how difficult that's going to be.
I'm sorry, I know I've put you through a lot lately.
Normal. You realize how much you're asking, right? You never even told me your real name. And after that incident with those hands...
Please, not so loud.
You're absolutely insane. I don't know how much more of this I can take.
I'm really sorry about that. Honestly, I am. But they were so proud when they heard I was hired for the gala. And they've always wanted me to focus on my musical career. They don't understand how important humans are to me.
I don't either.
Just for today, neither of us are going to mention humans.
That sounds wonderful, Heartstrings. Perhaps you can make a habit out of it.
I'm serious. Don't say anything.
She didn't want to discuss it any further. She headed for the living room and Bonbon went into the kitchen.
Sorry for the wait.
She was about to take a seat on the couch, but stopped herself. She couldn't sit like she normally did. Not in front of them. Slowly, awkwardly, she laid down like most ponies would. It wasn't a normal position for her.
It's been a while since you rode home. We haven't heard from you in months. How have you been?
Oh, I've been busy practicing, of course.
Your roommate mentioned that. I still can't believe you were accepted for the Grand Galloping Gala. That's a huge honor.
We always knew you were a prodigy. By the way, when we got here, your roommate said you were still going by that old nickname. I thought you'd grown out of that.
Oh, that? Yeah, the name kind of got on. That's what it's what every pony calls me now.
Just so long as you're done with those ridiculous old stories.
Lyra barely contained an outburst, knowing it wasn't worth it. Her parents were immovable in their skepticism. Her father had pointed to that grade on her report about humans all those years ago, and claimed that was proof they weren't real. What about the proof all around them? All of those relics of human society and Equestria that were so obvious if you just knew what to look for. Bonbon came out of the kitchen carefully, holding a tray of food in her teeth. She set it down on the table.
When we heard you'd be coming, I made sure to prepare something special.
It was the leftovers of the breakfast casserole she'd made that morning. She'd done a spectacular job of fixing it up to look fresh.
Anyway, I don't believe I caught your names earlier.
Dewey Decimal.
And my name is Cirrus. This is quite delicious. You mentioned you were a professional chef?
Confectioner. I just got the job recently, to be honest.
Whew.
The conversation had drifted away from her, for now at least. And as long as her parents weren't going to get on her case about that nickname, everything would go fine and she could enjoy the visit.
Ah, you're quite lucky, Heartstrings. You must get homemade sweets all the time.
Yeah, everything's pretty great around here.
Of course.
Everything's perfectly normal.
Glad to hear it. Anyway, there's been a lot going on in Canterlot ever since you left, Heartstrings.
Lyra winced at the name. She knew she'd be hearing it a lot today. But honestly, she was 16 years old. She was an adult now, and she'd been living on her own for several years now. Her parents still treated her like a filly. The next few hours dragged by. Her mother started talking about the weather factory's plans for the coming winter. Her father just wanted to talk about Canterlot society, which Bon Bon seemed to absolutely love. At one point they asked Lyra to play some of her material for the gala. She got out her lyre and played a piece for them. She went through about half of it. The melody just repeated in the second part anyway, and then put her lyre back in its case.
It would be great if you tried to take your talent further. Perhaps you should focus on it more.
Well, there's been other things occupying my time.
Such as?
Someone's here. I'll go get it. Yeah, I'll do it.
She was glad to be away for a little bit. Whoever it was, this distraction was welcome. After Lyra left the room, Cirrus turned to Bon Bon.
We have been worried, though. Heartstrings hasn't mentioned anything about humans to you, has she? When she was a filly, she was simply obsessed with them, and it's really not good for her. She's even still using that name.
Part of her wanted to scream at them, telling these surprisingly normal Canterlot ponies about the horrors she'd experienced because of their psychopath of a daughter. But instead, against her better judgment, she simply replied,
Humans? No, of course not. What are those? I've certainly never heard of them.
Ugh, that's a relief. She must have forgotten all about them.
Bon Bon glanced back towards the entry.
Hello, Lyra. I was hoping you'd be home. Can I come in? Sure. My parents are over for a visit, though. That's fine.
Twilight followed Lyra as they headed into the living room. She stopped when she saw Lyra's father. A smile spread across her face.
Mr. Dewey? From Canterlot?
Ah, Twilight Sparkle. It's been a while since I've seen you. I'd almost forgotten that you were living here in Ponyville now.
Lyra, you didn't tell me your father was Mr. Dewey. You never asked. I've really missed the Canterlot Library. It's the largest in Equestria. I used to spend hours there.
How have you been, Twilight? Still studying for the princess, I assume?
Of course, actually. She just gave me a new assignment. I came over because I needed to pick up a book that Lyra was borrowing. I thought you'd forgotten. The illustrated... Oh, that book! I didn't forget. In fact, it's in the study. We'll go on back and, get it.
The book in question was hidden along with the others behind the sofa. She quickly formulated a story.
I'm, terribly unorganized. Must have ended up there in accident, along with all my other books. When the bookshelves are bare. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. That's great. I probably wouldn't have remembered either. Except that the princess wanted me to write up some information in a report for her.
She noticed that her hooves had begun sliding across the floor. Lyra had gotten behind her and was pushing her towards the study.
That's very interesting, Twilight. Let's go find that book. I'm sure you're very busy. It's fine, Lyra. I can walk there on my own.
Lyra hurried off down the hall. With a puzzled look, Twilight followed her. Heading over the couch without a word, Lyra lifted up a book wedged behind it and the wall.
That's funny. How did it get back there? Anyways, there's your book. We were in the middle of something, actually, so if you could just leave and... Just checking. You're done with this, right? You got all the research you needed? Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can have it back. It's fine. Well, thanks.
I didn't realize the two of you were friends. We'd really like to hear about what you've been up to, Heartstrings.
Yeah, sorry.
She really hoped Twilight would leave soon before she could say anything about what that book was about.
It's strange. I've never really had much use for a book on cryptozoology, but I looked through my library and it was the only book I had that I could use for my research report.
Lyra was starting to feel a spell of lightheadedness coming on.
Really? What does the princess want you to study this time?
Actually, Lyra, maybe you could help me with this. I never actually heard about humans until you showed up.
Did you say humans?
Of course not, Twilight. I don't really know anything about...
I thought you said you were finished with this human obsession, Heartstrings.
I am. Of course I am. You were just in my library a few weeks ago asking about them. That's the book I came over for. I couldn't find anything else about humans in my other books. By the way, I noticed your hoof is better now.
Bonbon choked on a bite of casserole.
Yeah, I told you it was nothing. Princess Celestia wants a report on humans. But if Luna was any indication, they should both know more than anyone. And on top of that, hadn't Luna said that they'd never speak of humans again? Why would Celestia be sending her own apprentice to dig up whatever information was left? Unless...
Heartstrings, we'd really thought you'd come to your senses.
I'm sure you're going to be very busy preparing for your performance at the gala. You only have a few months. It's probably best if Twilight just gets her paper written. But I can't believe the princess would have you writing such a ridiculous assignment.
Maybe I came at a bad time. It's fine! I'm done with humans. I really should focus on my music, shouldn't I?
That's good to hear. I've always said you never should have given her those books in the first place.
I never thought it would become such a problem.
I don't even have those books anymore, so... Well, thanks for giving me this back. The princess actually didn't tell me very much. She's always giving me extra research projects in addition to my usual studies. It's really nothing special.
It is rather strange, but we shouldn't keep you from your work.
You're right, I shouldn't stay longer than I have to.
There was a long and painful silence.
So, any pony want dessert?
Dewey and Cirrus said their farewells as night fell, and Lyra waved goodbye as their carriage started down the road back to Canterlot. Once it was out of sight, she went back inside.
I must say, your family surprised me. They're so ordinary. Knowing you, I expected them to be...
She's on to us.
Who?
Princess Celestia!
What in Equestria are you talking about now, Lyra?
Do you really think it's a coincidence that Twilight's out asking around about humans? She's the princess's personal apprentice. She's spying on me because they know I know something nobody's supposed to know.
It was starting again. They'd had a day that was almost normal, and Lyra had truly been able to pass as a reasonably sane pony. But the moment her parents were gone, she had snapped again.
Lyra, Twilight's been our neighbor for over a year now. She's not a spy.
Then why does the princess need a report about humans? If Luna's any indication, I'd say they probably already know enough about them. It's me they're studying.